Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm truly glad you stopped by tonight to sit by the fire with me. All of us, from the youngest to the oldest, we're drawn to myths and legends. Some we know by heart, and some are so ancient, even our grandfathers have forgotten them. Tonight, we'll rediscover one of those forgotten tales. If it sparks your curiosity, feel free to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. And if not, that's okay. Time is a precious thing, and I wouldn't want you to waste it. Now then, make yourself comfortable. Maybe you're already in bed. Then close your eyes, breathe deep, and let the story begin. Before we begin, let me tell you where this story comes from. The tale of the Great Mammoth is not a modern fantasy. It lives in the breath of the North, among the ancient myths of the Evenki, Selkirk, Khanty, Nenets, and Yukahir peoples. For them, the mammoth is not just a creature of the past. It is a spirit, a guardian, a force of the earth itself. In some legends, it sleeps deep underground, hiding from the sun. In others, like the one you'll hear tonight, the mammoth is the first being, the one who lifted the land from the ocean floor and shaped the world with its tusks and weight. These stories were not written in books. They were whispered by firelight, passed down from one voice to another, like the wind between trees, like the snow between footsteps. Tonight, we will tell one of those stories, not word for word, but in spirit, a tale a northern shaman might have told slowly, gently, so that you may sleep and find yourself at the beginning of the world. In the beginning of time, there was no land, no blade of grass, not even a single bird's feather beneath the empty sky. There was no sun, no moon in the firmament. Only a few pale stars shimmered coldly above, and even they were scarce. Not a breath of wind stirred the stillness. An endless black sea stretched in all directions, without shore, without end. The water lay motionless, and a boundless silence reigned above the cold abyss. But deep beneath the quiet waters, on the very bottom, slumbered an ancient being. In the darkness of the abyss, it lay unmoving, as if asleep for ages, awaiting its time. That creature was vast and mighty, the great mammoth, the firstborn colossus with long curved tusks, thick warm fur, and a strong flexible trunk. Its massive body was draped with strands of seaweed and silt. It had lain on the seabed for so long. But then the mammoth opened its eyes, and two golden fires lit up the underwater darkness. The mammoth stirred, stretched its massive legs, and pushed off the silty bottom. Slowly, it floated upward. First, its back broke the mirrored surface, then its head. The entire creature rose higher and higher until at last the great mammoth emerged fully from the deep, vast and dark, like an island in the middle of the empty ocean. Dark water streamed down its mighty flanks, off its fur and tusks in rivulets. The mammoth took a deep breath, the first breath of air above the water, and looked around. All around lay sea, reaching to the ends of the world. Not a patch of solid ground, no cliff, not even a single pebble. Nowhere for a foot to rest. The mammoth's heart tightened at the emptiness. Nowhere to anchor. Nowhere for his great body to rest. Only cold water and still, silent air surrounded him. The mammoth sighed deeply, and wide ripples spread across the surface. In that moment, he heard a strange sound in the stillness, as if a whisper rose from the depths below. The mammoth listened. Beneath the sea, It was as though the sleeping earth itself called to him with a muffled groan, "Raise me, bring me into the light." Something within the mammoth responded to this silent call. He understood his purpose. A bold thought stirred in his heart: to raise the land, to create solid earth from the world ocean. Beneath the dark waters lay soft silt, sand, and stone, the dust of unborn worlds. This must be brought to the surface to form a new world. The mammoth prepared for his great labor. He filled his lungs with air, stretched his tusks forward, and plunged into the icy deep. Down he fell through the water's weight. Deeper and deeper, colder and colder it grew around him. The light of distant stars vanished above, and soon darkness engulfed him completely. He felt the pressure of the water squeezing his chest, a ringing in his ears. But he could not reach the bottom. His breath failed him. His lungs began to burn, crying out for air. He had to turn back. With powerful strokes of his limbs, the mammoth swam upward and broke the surface, gasping. Frothy waves rippled around him, breaking the ancient silence, and once again all was still. His first attempt to reach the earth had failed. The mammoth caught his breath. The water calmed again into a mirror, but the great beast would not give up. He took in even more air, swelling his broad chest, and dove again into the depths. This time he reached the ocean floor. Dark silt touched his feet, and the mammoth felt the longed-for firmness beneath him. A joy flared in his soul. He worked with his tusks, scooping up sand, mud, stones, anything that could be raised. With his trunk, he gathered as much heavy silt as he could and clutched it tightly. Then the colossus turned and began to rise, firmly holding his precious burden. But the journey to the surface was long. As the mammoth ascended through the depths, the water washed the earth from his trunk and between his tusks. By the time he burst into the light, there was almost nothing left, just a thin crust of mud and a few grains of sand that slipped back into the sea. The second attempt had failed. Only a cloud of silt rose around him and settled once more. The mammoth breathed heavily, his great shoulders weary. Twice now the ocean had denied him. His massive body ached, but the desire to finish what he began grew stronger. Again he heard the desperate call from the depths, as though the earth itself pleaded to be born. A mighty roar burst from the mammoth's chest, echoing beneath the empty sky. The colossus gathered all his strength. He filled his lungs, tensed every muscle, and dove once more. On this third dive, the enormous mammoth plunged deeper and more determined than ever. He pierced the water's mass with his body, diving fast and far. Darkness closed in around him, but now he did not fear it. He knew his goal was near. Gathering speed, the Titan drove his tusks into the ocean floor. He embedded them deep into the earth and pried loose a great clump. With effort, he tore a heavy mass of land from the seabed. The mammoth embraced the clump with his trunk, held it tight, and pushed upward with his massive legs. This time, he would not let the water steal his prize. He rose swiftly, relentlessly, preserving every bit of soil. Around him, silt churned upward from the bottom, but the mammoth held his course. Finally, above his head, the surface gleamed silver. He had reached the top. The mighty beast burst from the depths, trumpeting in triumph. In his tusks, cradled by his trunk, rested a large chunk of black, wet earth. Carefully, the mammoth held the soil above the water, eyeing it warily. What if it sank again? But the lump resisted. It seemed to rise toward the air. The mammoth made a choice, and let go. The earth plopped onto the surface and did not sink. It only dipped slightly, bobbing on the waves. The mighty beast stared in wonder. The soil floated like a boat, and soon even stranger things began to happen. The warm air and the mammoth's own breath touched the raw clay, and the earth began to grow. Slowly, steadily, the lump expanded outward and upward like rising dough. The moist ground bubbled, hardened, and spread. Before the mammoth's eyes, the tiny island grew larger and larger. At first, there was only one island in the sea. Beneath the mammoth's feet, solid ground finally lay. He stepped onto it, feeling it spring and support his immense weight. The mammoth trumpeted in joy. A deep call rolled across the waters, but the island was still too small, too narrow, not yet enough for life. The giant decided to help the land grow. He began to expand the newborn earth himself, using his tusks and massive body. He would hook the soft edge of the island, tear off a large piece, and carry it farther out to sea, dropping it. Wherever he dropped a clump, new land swelled and rose from the waves. Again and again the mammoth tossed chunks in all directions. From a single isle, many pieces of land were born. Where large clumps fell, continents rose. Where only a handful dropped, small islands appeared. The land spread and spread, crawling across the face of the sea, claiming space from the waters. Yet the new land was still soft and wet, like clay. Under the giant's weight, it sagged and shifted. The mammoth stepped cautiously, moving slowly. But still, where he lingered longer, the ground sank deeply. The colossus noticed that his steps left wide depressions, soon filled with water. Thus were formed the first lakes and swamps, footprints of the mammoth on the damp earth. Where he strained and climbed from the mire, mounds swelled beneath him. As if rising with him, the earth formed hills, the first gentle highlands. The land was still formless and needed shaping. The great Creator surveyed his domain and resolved to organize it. The mammoth tackled the mountains and plains. He slid his massive tusks deep beneath the soft crust and heaved it up in layers. So rose high mountain ridges that stretched their peaks toward the sky. At their summits, the mammoth blew his icy breath, and the first eternal snows formed, gleaming with frost. Then the Titan passed over the plains. With broad feet, he packed the soil, smoothing bumps and filling hollows. Thus were born open steppes and wide valleys. Where jagged rocks jutted out, the mammoth rolled his body over them, pressing them into the ground, and all became flat. Where the land lacked height, he pushed up hills with his massive chest. Slowly, the landscape gained its shapes, mountains, lowlands, plateaus, and slopes. As the mammoth labored, the sky began to change. Above the darkened peaks, the first clouds gathered. Warm vapor rose from the heated earth and drifted upward, veiling the stars. The first rain fell, fine and gentle over the fresh hills, feeding streams and lakes with new water. Meanwhile, the great ocean grudgingly retreated from the claimed space. Many places remained flooded. The ocean sent heavy waves to batter the edges of the new land, trying to reclaim them. The ancient ruler was displeased that his realm had been divided. The mammoth sensed the sea's anger. He heard the crashing of wave after wave against the shore, a murmuring voice in the stillness. Then the great mammoth lowered his tusks to the very edge and roared, addressing the ocean. "Be still, ancient sea. You still have water in plenty, and it shall forever circle the earth. But now the world is divided. Here shall be land and there your abyss. You shall not undo what I have made. The sea foam raged in reply, swelling in towering waves. But the mammoth stood firm. He carved a deep line with his tusk along the shore, marking a new boundary. Here ends the sea, and here begins the earth, he proclaimed aloud. The ocean heard and withdrew, though unwillingly. Since then, the waves have ceaselessly battered the shore, trying to break the land and take it back. But the earth stands strong, yet even on land water was in excess. It wandered, seeking no path to return. So the mammoth decided to guide it. He began to carve riverbeds. With his tusk, he drew long, winding furrows from the heart of the land to the sea. The waters gladly followed these paths, finding new courses. The great beast carved many such rivers, both large and small. Under his heavy steps, trenches formed, and the overflow from lakes flowed swiftly into them. Soon, fresh streams gurgled across the land. Shimmering rivers, like silver snakes, twisted across the plains, gathering moisture and returning it to the great sea. Stream by stream, river by river, the Mother Earth dried out, no longer a swamp. She drank deeply and gave back the rest. They say that when the mammoth carved the very first deep channel, a special spirit awakened in it. From the water's edge, the head of a giant serpent rose. Its scales glistened dark and wet, and its eyes were golden like ancient coins. It hissed softly, greeting the mammoth. Shh! The great beast heard the whisper and did not drive the creature away, for he knew a new force of nature was born. Swim, serpent, rule the waters, the mammoth rumbled gently. The serpent bowed and vanished into the river's bend. Since then, that mighty river has been guided by the water serpent. He watches to keep its course true, never turning backward. Thus the mammoth labored for who knows how long. He felt no fatigue and kept no count of ages in the twilight. And at last, everything was ready, and the world held its breath in anticipation of a new wonder. The sun rose ever higher, bathing the newborn world in warm light. The great mammoth watched as green shoots gradually spread across the plains like a soft carpet. The grass grew quickly. Delicate stems stretched upward, unfurling tiny leaves toward the sun. Among the green blades, tiny buds soon appeared. They opened to the morning light. And so, among the grasses, the first small flowers bloomed in white and blue. For the first time in all existence, color had touched the earth. Not long after, willow thickets sprang up by the stream banks. In drier places, slender birch trees pushed out from the soil. Their sticky young leaves unfolded before his eyes, rustling in the breeze. On the higher hills grew dark green pines and cedars, their roots gripping rocky ground. A young forest began to rise where only bare earth had lain before. In the fragrant grass, the first winged creatures appeared. Bright orange butterflies flitted over the tender flowers. Bees, like tiny fuzzy balls, emerged from hidden nooks, buzzing as they danced above the blossoms. They gathered sweet nectar, not knowing why, simply following the ancient wisdom awakened in them with the flowers. Near a quiet forest lake, dragonflies flashed their transparent wings in the sunlight. The world began to fill with gentle motion and soft sound. The mammoth dipped his trunk into the cool lake and took several long drinks of fresh water. It tasted wonderfully sweet, alive with the breath of new grass and earth. The giant felt his thirst fade and a deep sense of calm settle in. He lifted his head and gazed around. The noonday sun blazed overhead, pouring golden light over the slopes and valleys. The air had grown warm and still. A quiet stillness settled over the land. The heat of noon brought a gentle drowsiness. The mammoth walked slowly to a meadow and lay down, tucking his massive legs beneath him. The warm earth gently cradled his side. The great beast closed his eyes, listening for a while to the hum of bees and the whisper of young leaves. The world was peaceful and kind, and even a mighty creator felt the pull of rest. Before long, the mammoth's ears caught a faint rustle from the shade of the nearby grove. He lifted his head and looked intently in that direction. Among the young trees, a graceful figure moved. A slender deer cautiously stepped out of the woods. Noble antlers crowned his head, and large dark eyes gazed in wonder at the wide new world. The deer raised his muzzle, sniffing the unfamiliar scents, then lowered it and nibbled a clump of soft grass. Behind him, more deer emerged. A small herd came to graze on the sunlit plain. They soon spotted the massive figure of the mammoth and froze, ready to flee at any moment. But the giant stood still, careful not to frighten the new beings. He let out a deep, gentle sound, soft and calming. Hearing that friendly voice, the deer stopped trembling. It seemed they understood this was a great spirit, their creator and protector. Snorting softly, the herd resumed grazing not far from the mammoth. A little farther away, in a marshy hollow, a heavy moose rose from the thicket. He stepped slowly into the shallow water, placing each hoof carefully on the spongy bottom. His broad shovel-like antlers crowned his head. The moose bent down and tore off a tuft of water grass. In the nearby bushes, something darted quickly. A small creature zipped from one grassy mound to another. A long-eared hare had emerged. It sat among the greenery and began nibbling juicy grass, twitching its alert ears. Moments later, another fuzzy bundle hopped out behind it, and the two hares began to play in the glade, sampling the first stems and blossoms. Behind a large gray boulder, two cautious eyes observed them. A red fox crouched low, belly to the ground. She watched the playing hares without blinking, her fluffy tail flicking gently. She was not yet hungry, but the instinct of the hunt had begun to stir, and she studied her potential prey. For now, the clever predator stepped slowly out of her hiding place, and the hares instantly vanished into the tall grass. The fox sniffed, then trotted off lazily along the forest's edge, leaving a trail of paw prints in the sand beside the stream. Just then, a new sound echoed from the clear sky, the cry of a bird. High above the clouds soared a great white bird with wide wings. It circled slowly, riding the rising currents of warm air, exploring the new land below. It was the first swan, a traveler from the far edge of the heavens, drawn by the light of the new day. Spying the shimmering lake and bands of green below, the bird glided down in joy. It touched the earth with its feet and let out a loud, triumphant call, as if to declare its arrival. The cry echoed through the air, and other voices answered. A small, colorful bird fluttered from the bushes and perched on a birch branch. She looked around, then burst into a delicate silvery trill, the very first bird song in the New World. More little birds flew in from all directions and began to chirp in chorus, calling back and forth. One tiny titmouse dared to fly very close to the great beast. She landed on the mammoth's curved tusk and chirped, tilting her head. The giant held still, smiling inwardly so as not to frighten the fragile guest. The bird chirped again, as if greeting the very creator, then fluttered back to her flock. The forest, once silent, now rang with the bright music of birds. Underwater, too, life was awakening. In the clear stream flowing from the hills, a silver flash darted. A tiny fish leapt up and snatched the first mosquito from the surface. Its scales glittered in the sunlight before it vanished again. Soon a whole school followed. Nimble pale fish, slipping swiftly in unison, sparkling. A few swam into the shallows to warm themselves, dark backs breaking the surface briefly. In deeper pools, larger shapes stirred. One sluggish creature poked out a whiskered snout from under the log, then slipped back into the depths. The water was no longer empty. It teemed with new inhabitants. By the forest lake, a brown bear emerged from the brush. Broad-chested, the lord of the taiga stepped to the shore, drawn by the splashes of playful fish. He sat beside the water, waiting motionless for a catch to come close. Soon a large fish swam near, and with a lightning strike of his paw, the bear scooped it from the lake. The fish writhed and flashed in his claws, but soon fell still. Grumbling with satisfaction, the bear began his first raw meal. Lifting his head from his catch, the bear stared at the distant figure of the mammoth. He sniffed the afternoon air, trying to understand the presence of this titan. Then he gave a short grunt, perhaps in greeting, perhaps in challenge, and turned, vanishing back into the undergrowth. And so the world began to fill with beasts and birds. The great mammoth watched them from his meadow and felt quiet joy. He knew he was no longer alone. All across the land, living beings now roamed, swam, and flew. They filled the once silent world with new sounds. Like a vast choir of nature, they replaced the age-old silence with a living harmony. Bird song, splashing water, the hum of insects, rustling leaves, and the distant voices of animals, all blending into a single melody of life. The day wore on toward evening. The sun sank lower, painting the sky with soft gold. Long shadows stretched from hills and trees. Birds slowly quieted, finding resting places in the branches and reeds. Creatures settled into hidden spots to rest after their first day on earth. In the west, the sky burned crimson. The fiery sun touched the edge of the distant sea and began to sink. For a few moments, the heavens blazed with farewell light, then the colors faded. The first twilight fell. One by one, cold stars lit up in the darkening sky. The same stars that had long watched over an empty world now gazed down upon a living earth. After the stars, the round moon rose in the east. Its gentle light spilled over the sleeping plains, laying silver across the lakes and rivers. In this quiet hour, a long howl rose from afar. On a hill beneath the moon stood the silhouette of a gray wolf, calling out to the first night of the world. Another answered, then a third. A whole pack emerged from the forest shadows. The wolves raised their snouts to the bright moon and sang their first song, their echoes rolling through the mountains. Somewhere nearby, owls hooted their deep notes into the night. Night deepened, and once again, silence returned to the land. But not the lifeless silence of before. This was a peaceful hush, filled with the steady breath of sleeping creatures, the flutter of invisible wings, and the soft chirr of insects in the grass. The great mammoth lifted his gaze to the star-filled sky and listened to this new stillness. Beneath his feet, he felt a faint tremble of life, as if the earth itself breathed deeply in sleep, its heart newly awakened. The mammoth understood that his greatest task was complete. The earth was alive, breathing, and filled with motion and sound. He sighed softly, this time with ease and contentment, and closed his eyes in bliss. For a long time, the mammoth stood under the stars, gazing into the boundless sky. Then he slowly lay down on the soft grass and rested on his side. For the first time, he allowed himself to rest without worry. The warm night wrapped the Titan like a gentle blanket, and he slipped into a deep slumber to the steady rhythm of distant, peaceful waves. The world slept alongside its creator. At dawn, when the sun rose once more above the horizon, the mammoth awoke from his short rest. The world was alive, moving on its own. In the sky, a flock of white geese soared in a V formation, heading toward a distant lake. On the plain below, deer grazed and made their way carefully to drink at the water's edge. From the forest came the distant calls of beasts. All around, life no longer needed his direct care. The creation had become independent. The mammoth moved across the plain, and the ground trembled beneath his weight. Small creatures scattered. Ground squirrels darted into their burrows. Birds startled from nearby branches. The giant halted. He realized that his colossal strength and mass could now harm this fragile new world. He did not want to damage what he had built with such love. Then the great mammoth made a solemn decision to leave the surface and return to the realm of the depths, from where he could watch over his creation unseen. The mammoth journeyed to the world's edge, to where land meets the ocean's vastness. With slow, deliberate steps, he walked through forests and tundras, bidding farewell to every corner of the land he had shaped. He passed over endless bogs and mountain passes, crossed wide rivers. At last, ahead shimmered the infinite water. The great mammoth stopped at the shore of the northern sea. In the sky, the pale North Star shone faintly, guiding the way into the unknown deeps. The colossus raised his head and looked once more upon the heavens and the land he had created. A deep sound welled in his chest, a farewell call to all living things. He gave a low, rumbling cry, then stepped into the icy waters. The waves parted before him, foaming around his massive form. Deeper and deeper he waded until the water closed above his shoulders. The great beast vanished beneath the surface, descending into the lower world, the realm of eternal cold and darkness beneath the continents. There, in the gloom of the deep, the mammoth found a resting place beneath the center of the new earth. He lay down on the floor of the underwater abyss and took the weight of the land onto his broad back. Since that time, the world has rested upon him, a steadfast foundation. The mammoth felt that his great task was done. He found long-awaited peace in the cold depths, knowing the world above was well made and protected from within. Years and centuries passed. Life on earth grew and multiplied. Forests became denser. Herds of animals roamed farther across the vast lands. In spring, floodwaters carried ice and awakened the soil. In summer, the sun shone for days without setting, and the tundra bloomed in carpets of color. In autumn, the sunset sky blazed gold and crimson, and flocks of birds flew south in great arrows. In winter, long nights covered the earth, and green veils of northern lights danced silently across the dark sky. Nature lived in this eternal cycle, while the great mammoth lay unmoving in the deep, holding the world on his back. In time, people appeared, new creatures unlike any before. They never saw the mammoth upon the surface, but they felt his presence. On long polar nights around their campfires, northern elders would tell that the great mammoth had never truly left, that he still lived deep beneath the earth. He was the chief spirit of the lower world, the one who bore the land upon his back. In the tundra, nomads believed, when the ground groaned and trembled, it was the giant beast shifting in his sleep beneath them. Sometimes hunters would find enormous bones and long twisted tusks along riverbanks. These white relics jutted from the frozen soil like roots of colossal trees. People said, this was the mammoth reminding the world of himself, showing his horns for just a moment from beneath the ground. The great mammoth became the invisible guardian of the world. When he cautiously shifts his weight in his deep dwelling, the surface quakes. Humans feel it as an earthquake. When the colossus rolls over or changes position, cracks form in the earth's crust, riverbanks sink, and new hills rise. And if the mammoth sighs or lets out a roar, a deep rumble echoes through the soil, the voice of the land itself, answering the movement of its ancient guardian. They say that in the quietest nights, if you press your ear to the ground, you can catch a distant hum and a gentle trembling from the deep. It is the breath of the great mammoth, peacefully sleeping beneath the thick layers of earth. The land breathes slow and steady with him. All living things rest under his watchful care, and we, the children of this earth, fall asleep to the rhythm of the world's eternal heart, shaped and guarded by the great mammoth. Legends of the mammoth, the ancient creator of the earth. In the traditions of the northern peoples, a shroud of ancient mystery surrounds the mammoth. To some, it is more than a creature. It is a titan of the earth, a guardian of the underworld, a shaper of the world itself. From the frozen tundras of Siberia to the whispering prairies of North America, legends echo through time, tales of a giant beast that carved the land by furrowing the primal ocean with its tusks. They say the mammoth stirred the silence of the watery abyss, pulling up ridges, mountains, and forests from the sea's forgotten depths. Its bones, now turned to stone, lie hidden beneath layers of frost and moss, sacred relics in the eyes of shamans and dreamers alike. Even today, the image of the mammoth endures, a silent, towering witness to the birth of the world. The mammoth in northern shamanic traditions. In the shamanic visions of the north, the mammoth is not just a relic, but a powerful spirit. To the Chukchi, it is a being of the other world, a servant of the Kale, the spirits of the underworld. They call the mammoths the reindeer of the dead. To the Kilo, these beasts are like herds of livestock, kept in the shadows beneath the ground. When tusks emerge from the tundra, ritual must follow. Without offerings, the spirits may grow angry. One old tale tells of hunters who found 2 tusks rising from the earth. They beat their drums, they sang their chants, they left gifts for the spirits, and then, from the soil, an entire mammoth rose up. They say its meat fed the hunters all winter, and when the bones were stripped, new flesh grew again by dawn. The mammoth gave and gave, a divine gift of survival. To this day, the Arctic peoples treat mammoth ivory with awe. In Chukotka and Yakutia, tusks are never taken lightly. Before carving, Yakut artisans still whisper prayers. They offer fat to the fire, seeking forgiveness from the spirits of earth and water. For them, a mammoth's tusk is not simply a thing, but a spirit's gift, a sacred echo of an ancient power. And so, the great mammoth sleeps, beneath our feet, beneath the rivers and forests, beyond the reach of light or time. He rests still, not gone, not forgotten, but ever present in the bones of the earth. His breath rises with the mists. His heartbeat echoes in the distant rumble of the ground. In silence, he bears the weight of all that came after, the songs of birds, the footprints of beasts, the laughter of children, the sorrow of loss, the bloom of life. Pause. Soft rustle of leaves. Long ago he rose from the void, not to conquer, but to create. Not with fire, but with breath. Not with fury, but with patience and strength. He carved rivers to guide. He raised mountains for shelter. He planted the world with his footsteps. He watered it with effort. And when it was done, when dawn broke over land no longer empty, he stepped aside. He disappeared into the deep, content with silence. But he is still here, soft swell and ambient sound. In every trembling hill, in the whisper of grass, in the hush before the storm. He watches, not as a god, but as a keeper, not above us, but beneath us. The people who remember say, listen to the land. You may hear him turning in his sleep. Feel the earth. You may know his warmth. In dreams, sometimes, when the wind is low and the stars are clear, you might see him, walking slowly beneath the northern lights, tusks of gold, eyes deep as worlds, long pause, quiet fade of ambient wind. This is not the end of his story, only the closing of a chapter. As long as the earth holds its shape, the mammoth will hold us. And if the world one day cracks or begins to fade, perhaps he will rise again, to rebuild, to breathe again, to remake the morning. Until then, let us tread gently. Let us remember the one who made room for us. Let us live as he once walked, with care, with strength, and with silence. Sleep well, great mammoth. The world rests easy because of you. And so, the great mammoth sleeps, beneath our feet, beneath the rivers and forests, beyond the reach of light or time. He rests still, not gone, not forgotten, but ever present in the bones of the earth. His breath rises with the mists. His heartbeat echoes in the distant rumble of the ground. In silence, he bears the weight of all that came after, the songs of birds, the footprints of beasts, the laughter of children, the sorrow of loss, the bloom of life. Pause. Soft rustle of leaves. Long ago he rose from the void, not to conquer, but to create. Not with fire, but with breath. Not with fury, but with patience and strength. He carved rivers to guide. He raised mountains for shelter. He planted the world with his footsteps. He watered it with effort. And when it was done, when dawn broke over land no longer empty, he stepped aside. He disappeared into the deep, content with silence. But he is still here, soft swell and ambient sound. In every trembling hill, in the whisper of grass, in the hush before the storm. He watches, not as a god, but as a keeper, not above us, but beneath us. The people who remember say, listen to the land. You may hear him turning in his sleep. Feel the earth. You may know his warmth. In dreams, sometimes, when the wind is low and the stars are clear, you might see him, walking slowly beneath the northern lights, tusks of gold, eyes deep as worlds, long pause, quiet fade of ambient wind. This is not the end of his story, only the closing of a chapter. As long as the earth holds its shape, the mammoth will hold us. And if the world one day cracks or begins to fade, perhaps he will rise again, to rebuild, to breathe again, to remake the morning. Until then, let us tread gently. Let us remember the one who made room for us. Let us live as he once walked, with care, with strength, and with silence. Sleep well, great mammoth. The world rests easy because of you.